avatar is killing me.
Hello, welcome everyone to Aucademy.
Hello.
My name's Katie Monday. I'm kind of vaguely doing hosting today, I think. And I'm being joined by the wonderful David Gray Hammond of Emergent Divergence, Bobbi Elman from Bobbi Elman's NeuroDivergent Autistic Experience Consultancy and Training. I had to write it down, otherwise I wouldn't say it right. I knew I wouldn't. Jaesic from Queer Cult Community, and our very own Sire Hodgson, who is better known as Northern Autie or Bad Altitude. And we are talking about substance use, autistic substance use tonight. So it's probably good if I do a little bit of housekeeping on that, because it's a very important subject, but obviously can be quite difficult to kind of listen to and engage with in the comment section and stuff like that. I know that Ben, who's got helping out with the comment section, and Chloe's helping out with the comment section today. Please feel free to join in, engage. Just remember that we're not clinicians, but this isn't necessarily group therapy. But ask your questions if you feel like you would like to, or add in whatever you've got to say. Also, just want to kind of do a general kind of content warning, and then we'll get into it, I'm sure. So I just wanted to do a content warning for like suicide, overdose, definitely intravenous drug use, criminal exploitation, neglect, abuse. Oh, someone's very wonderfully written it down as well. Psychosis and institutionalisation. If we press on anything else tonight, if we can just kind of do a content warning beforehand, that'd be really, really helpful. But I don't know if anyone wants to add any to that, or should we just do it as we go? Just do it as we go.
See how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll start with physical descriptions. I'll do mine, and then we'll go to our quivering bird. So I might be typing tonight, or they might be using mouth words or a mixture of both, perhaps. But I'll start with me. So Katie Monday, I am a kind of thick and chunky white person. I have very messy hair, which is annoying me. It's short and blonde. I'm sitting in front of Simon's favourite old lady green curtains. And I've got my big glasses on so I can see what I'm actually doing. And I'm wearing a very lovely T-shirt, if anyone can see that. Autistically Empowered T-shirt from Callum Brazo on his Haute Couture.
Nice.
So, Simon, if you want to do a description of how you look tonight, that would be lovely.
All right, I am the voice of Sai today, and Sai says, I'm a dancing elephant chicken in a nightclub with lobsters for groupies. But in actuality, should I describe, or are we going to?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. What is that? An emu? Ostrich?
Ostrich. Let's go for ostrich.
Ostrich. Okay. So we've got this fun cartoonized ostrich avatar, we'll call it, in front of, it looks like maybe an African landscape behind with the pretty flat trees and golden brush of stuff.
Yes.
And Sai says, might look like an ostrich, but I'm definitely a chicken. All right, Sai, we'll allow that.
And Jaesic, do you want to do a little description of yourself next?
Absolutely. I am a white, non-binary human. I have bleach blonde, longish hair on top and shaved sides. I am wearing a tie-dye light blue V-neck shirt, and I am sitting in front of my largely messy room with all that. So just don't pay attention to my background if you're looking at me.
And David?
I am David. I am a white male in his 30s of Mediterranean descent. I am wearing a kind of burnt orange t-shirt as opposed to my usual summer garb of a vest top. It's definitely something to be said there about me needing to do some laundry. And the room I am in is almost exclusively blue, except for this very majestic bookcase that I built, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I built this.
Very nice.
And yeah, that's me.
Perfect. Last but not least, our Bobbi.
Hello, I'm Bobbi. I am an old, I always say that, old, 52 female presenting non-binary person, autistic, apparently ADHD as well. There you go. I have pinkish raspberry sort of red hair with a black band, black glasses, like I said, very, very white skin, and a black top. And I'm actually sitting in my bedroom with a bookcase behind me as well. And I didn't make that bookcase. It came like that.
Yeah, we can't all be as cool. Sorry, go ahead.
They do not make their own furniture. They get somebody else to make their furniture. Yeah, love it.
Just as valid.
So my first question was actually because I thought it was just going to be me and David today. I don't know why I thought that, but we've been joined by other wonderful people today. But you'll probably be able to help David kind of answer this anyways. So when obviously a lot of what you write about, David, is about like autistic experience of kind of like drugs, alcohol, and substance use. And I just wondered why it is that you use the word substance use as opposed to kind of, you also see people use like substance abuse or substance misuse and stuff. I know you think very clearly about the words that you use. So I just wondered if you...
So I'll be honest, I don't even particularly like the term substance use. There's not really many non-pathologizing ways to talk about it because they've all been claimed by, you know, medical practitioners. But I try to refer to it more recently as psychoactive drug use. I refuse to use the word misuse because when people are using drugs, they're not misusing them. They know exactly what they want from them, and they do exactly what they're intended to do for the most part. So substance use as opposed to substance misuse, largely because I don't think it is misuse, and I think calling it substance misuse is just another way of shifting the blame onto the person taking drugs or drinking, as opposed to saying, well, hey, something else is going on here.
Yeah, and presumably the same for abuse as well, possibly.
Yeah.
I think Simon's just added something there, which I may possibly have missed.
I got you. It's a support need that you give yourself because the actual support need you want isn't available.
Yeah, and this is a really important point as well, because for me, when I became an addict, it was it was an indicator that there were unmet support needs there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I call it self-medicating. Like, I literally do. Like, that's how I see it. When it comes to neurodivergent people, and when it comes to autistic people, because I can't talk for, other communities, and I can't talk for neurotypical. But for me, I think, as David said, it is a need or as Simon said, it's a need that's not being met. So you self-medicate. You figure out a way to meet that need.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think any of it's kind of like linked to kind of masking or shielding?
For me, it was 1000%. I'll be honest. The only thing I'm actually addicted to is caffeine and nicotine, literally. But I don't think there's a drug in the 80s and in the 90s that I didn't take, and I definitely drank to be able to go out. Yep. So it was 100% a masking tool for me. If I knew I was going to a party, it was drink before you even go, because then you're in a certain mood already and you can deal with it.
Same, Bobbi. That's exactly my experience.
Yeah. I would almost like pre-drink the pre-drink. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm doing my own pre-drink.
The problem I had was that I pre-drunk so much that I never actually stopped drinking. Because I needed the alcohol to feel okay. Quite frankly, the world was not built for me, and that's where it all started with me. Was I discovered getting drunk and smoking cannabis pretty much on the same day, and it also happened to coincide with me starting to and trigger warning for psychosis here. It started with me hearing voices, and then within a week I started drinking and smoking cannabis, and I was like, well, hey, I feel much better now. And at the time, there'd been questions about me being autistic my whole life, but no one really confirmed it, and it wasn't particularly in my mind. But when I look back, it was one thing that Tanya Adkin always says to me, it's a spoons extender. So if you're in a situation that's going to require a lot of spoons to survive, you drink or you take drugs, because it doesn't give you more spoons. It takes the spoons you've got and makes them feel as if they're going further.
Absolutely. And
that resonates.
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, Bobbi, you were about to say.
No, I mean, like I said, I don't know what it's like to be addicted to something other than, like I said, caffeine and nicotine. And even that, now I've stopped smoking and I'm vaping. I'm like trying to sort of deal with that. For me, it was always a matter of control. And I think alcohol and definitely certain drugs made me feel as if I was a little bit more in control and could handle that situation a little bit more. So I wasn't looking to numb necessarily. I mean, I did eventually in other ways. For social, it was try to be NT. It was literally to try to be neurotypical.
Yeah.
Like for me.
Yeah. I think Sai relates to that too. They say, first I'd drink and smoke to fit in, but it later became a trauma response to dull the pain of decades of loneliness, gaslighting, and validation and prejudice.
Yep. Yeah, I could not nod my head harder to that.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like a personal thing for me, but I find it with other autistic friends that I have, that I've always hung around with people who are much older than me.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. Like, I just looked around at my peers at school or then at college, and then just thought, yeah, we are not the same people. Not knowing that I was autistic, ADHD, mental health, and I think because of that, I looked outside of that, what would probably have been quite a safe bubble, presumably, and went chasing things that were not. Because you have to be, in my opinion, or in my experience anyways, you have to be a certain kind of person to be in your 30s hanging around with a 16-year-old person who you assume to be a girl. So yeah, I wonder what your experiences of that was. Anybody just chip in with that? We'll just have a conversation about it.
Well, I most of my friends, so I literally have about 5 friends from my high school. We went to a very small high school, but I literally have about 5 friends from that high school. They are all my age, but I realize now that every one of them is neurodivergent, probably in some way or another. Like, we find our tribe.
Right.
But then again, now since I'm being older, I have older friends, but then I also have younger friends, but not so young, right, as being 15 and being friends with a 16-year-old.
Right.
Like, there's a line. Yeah. I can say that as a young child, there were certain people that did try to friend me, that were much older than me. And I know of situations of a person who fell into that and was given things, and alcohol was one of the first things. And that's a really, really something we don't talk about. And it's very, very real when it comes to young autistic people. Yeah. There's a vulnerability that I think people don't talk about enough, if you know what I mean.
I can add to that for sure, because in my experience, so I think specifically with neurodivergent people, and like from my own experience and the people that I've shared with, we're all kind of old souls, because I think we've talked about this here on Aucademy as well, where the way that the world is not suited for us, the way that we are not built for the way society is, it kind of forces a certain level of maturity to happen, unless needs aren't being met, and then it can go in the opposite direction. So or even maybe not, that's not accurate, but I know growing up, I was constantly considered an old soul, conditioning me along, like comparing that with my upbringing, like the bad attachment styles that my parents gave me, all that, like it brought me to relationships that were extremely toxic. Like, I dated a 30-year-old as a 20-year-old, and he like completely destroyed me as a person. Like, I had to start from ground zero after that relationship, and it kept happening for like 7 years of my life, the same cycle. And absolutely alcohol and other drugs were involved, because I was an old soul. That was the older crowd. That's what was being done. I didn't see how manipulative and toxic it was while I was in it, because I was thinking, oh, I'm such a cool person. Like, I've got my shit together. These older people are like hanging out with me, and that feels right. That feels good. When really it's like, no one their own age group, like that's the flag. That's the red flag. Like, if no one in their age group is wanting to be around this person for very long or date this person at all, why are they going 10 years their junior, to take advantage of the naivete there? So now that I'm past that stage, it's like, oh my God, I had to dull myself with cannabis and alcohol, not only to fit in, but to literally cope with the manipulation and the toxicity that I didn't have a grasp on consciously. It was all subconscious. Yeah, David.
I just wanted to sort of dig into that point a bit as well, because people always center the drug use as the problem, and I don't think the drug use is the problem.
No!
It's the predatory people that surround the world of drug use that will encourage people who perhaps might have dabbled in it a bit. They'll take that person, befriend them, and suddenly they're getting plied with drugs and alcohol, and their situation's getting worse. So it gets to a point where, first of all, it was a bit of fun because, okay, well, this person's giving me drugs and alcohol. I like the way it makes me feel, but now they're exploiting me. They're taking advantage of me, and to cope with it, I need these drugs and alcohol. It's one thing that always frustrates me when people center drugs and alcohol as the problem. It's another reason why, personally, I don't believe that drugs should be a criminal issue. Because all the time they're a criminal issue, it's in the hands of the black market, and it's the people in those sort of underground markets, let's say, that take advantage of people and create a lot of the dangers and associated issues surrounding the world of psychoactive drug use.
Absolutely. Bobbi, do you want to go and then I'll read Sai's comment?
Yeah. No, go ahead and read Sai's comment first. I don't want to be rude.
Sai says, I've never understood the stigma of addiction. Even the word addiction has negative connotations, yet everyone is addicted to something, whether it's a routine, cigarettes, alcohol, sugar, caffeine, the thrill from driving at speed, gambling, shopping, exercise, work, food, sex. They're all addictions, yet addiction is demonized because we're constantly told what isn't good for you or morally correct. That's so on point, Sai.
I was just going to say that, so in Philly, in my 20s, in that scene, clubbing, bars and things. And actually, no, I'm lying. I was 18 years old. I was underage. Sorry, don't do this, kids. And I was given things free. Like that's a thing, 18-year-old girl and this older person is giving me substances free, and I know that goes on now still. I know that's how things work. For an autistic person, personally, I think it's so much more dangerous because I'm going to be brutally honest. What I came on to and what I actually liked was things that made me more energetic, let's say. Yeah. And to be constantly given them, you're in such a vulnerable situation because it is. You're given the thing that's actually allowing you to mask even further. Does that make sense? Yeah. I was grateful in a way that I actually I ended up moving out of Philadelphia and in the middle of nowhere and couldn't get a hold of anything, and that actually would have worked out a little bit better for me. But I think parents today need to understand the need to do anything to mask, take anything to make it a little bit easier, and then, like you said, there are people out there that are predators all around the drug industry. In my opinion, they're all predators. Not one of them is not a predator, in any way, shape, or form. And I'm glad we're having this conversation tonight because, as I keep saying, I don't think it's something that's talked about very often. All right, I went off on a complete tangent there.
No, you totally didn't. You totally didn't. I just want to put Angela's comment in there before it goes away, and I don't know how to use stuff on the computer. Angela's just put, wow, struggling with some of these issues and just had a major epiphany. Thank you for this conversation. So yeah, that's part of the reason why these conversations are so important. I also want to discuss about the idea of gateway drugs, and actually it was really the idea of gateway substances or whatever. But actually, I'd like to add my thoughts to that before I ask anyone else if that's okay, because it really fits in with what we've just said.
Yep.
So I actually found that so speed and coke were my things.
I didn't want to say words.
Yeah, so there were other things sprinkled in there, but they were my most evenings, definitely a Saturday, Friday night thing, but yeah, a lot more of my time than I would have liked to. But actually I found that, I don't know if this sounds peculiar, but actually the over alcohol consumption in my brain, that was okay. The smoking weed, that was okay. The taking a ridiculous amount of diazepam to deal with the fact that I've just taken 10 ton of uppers is okay. But the uppers were where my line was drawn. So I found that doing that for the amount of time that I did them for was actually my gateway out of the situation that I had embroiled myself in, which was if anyone is familiar with 1% bike gangs, Sons of Anarchy, if you don't know it in real life, that kind of thing was definitely what that was part of my life for a few years. But I found that I found that was my line, oddly enough. So I almost see those as a gateway drug, but actually out of the bullshit, not further into it. But I just wondered what people thought about the idea of gateway substances.
Okay, so
Lots of stuff, yeah.
Gateway substances, and this is going to be controversial because I know everyone has a different idea of what a gateway substance is. I don't think there actually is a gateway substance.
No.
I think specifically, if you want to look for your gateway into addiction, you've got to look at the trauma someone has experienced in their life. And more specifically, you've got to look at the ignorance that surrounds that person's needs. Because when people have their needs met, they are much less likely to start self-medicating with whatever. You know, I was really into uppers for a number of years when I was studying, but oh, surprise, surprise, I'm currently being diagnosed with ADHD.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, and no one really noticed the fact that I was taking all these uppers and getting really sleepy, whereas everyone else was bouncing off the walls.
Amazing.
For me, everyone's like, "Oh, ecstasy's great. I can dance all night." I'd take it, and I'd be lying there going like, "I need to sleep. I'm actually tired." But for me, the gateway out was probably what most people would consider the terminal point of drug addiction, which was, I was addicted to opioids. So, I mean, to put it in perspective a bit here, I'll also talk about some of my specific drug use here. So just a warning for people. My day by the end of my addiction started with a full bottle of Oromorph, which is liquid morphine. A bottle typically lasts you a month, but I would have one for breakfast. A handful of oxycodone and about 60 milligrams of diazepam. That was my breakfast. I didn't eat food. I just took drugs. But it was only when I realized I had this epiphany one day, having trigger warning for death. I nearly lost my life. And I woke up in hospital and I was like, if I don't stop doing what I'm doing, I am not going to survive. But the thing is I might not have escaped addiction if it hadn't have got that bad.
Right.
There's that saying that I've heard a lot: you only hit rock bottom when you're ready to put down the shovel. And I think, it was opioids that were my gateway out, because it took me nearly not making it to make it.
Yeah, wow. I was saying, I wonder if addiction is common in the autistic/ADHD community, not only because of trauma, but because it also feeds into our monotropic nature. Many drugs like speed, coke, ecstasy had little to no effect on me.
Yeah, that's why I was like, my gateway in and my gateway out was meth. I'm sorry, and it didn't even occur to me that I was completely ADHD, because speed just seemed to calm me down. Coke was okay, but not so great. But meth was a whole different level. And I was, like I said, I was that ilk. And everybody around me was smoking. Pot. And I wasn't interested. And I can't do ecstasy. I tried ecstasy once, and literally on my wedding night, so bad. Literally in heaven in London, and we got kicked out because I got sick all over the place. So, and these are the shames that you carry, right? But the way out was, we were in California visiting a friend, biker people, right? And we're in the house, and there had been people in that house that hadn't slept for 2 or 3 days. There was a guy walking around that hadn't slept for a week. And I'm looking at these people, and I'm sober at this point, yeah? and we were about to do something, and I'm just looking around and I'm watching this guy taking a whole a broom, turning it upside down and hitting it into the corner of the room because he said there were cameras there. That was my opening. That was my aha moment. That was my, oh no, you don't even want to go. You can't be like, that's going to be you if you keep doing this type
Right.
thing, right? You
Uh,
know, and it's hard because my I'm adopted and my sister is adopted, and my sister is a raging addict to this day, alcoholic, and smokes crack and doesn't seem to want help. So it's really, there's that side too. So I have sort of two insights, and I think that insight of also my sister kind of made me go, yeah, no, you know, you just, you want to live a completely different life than this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, I'll just say Lorena's comment before that disappears. Lorena said, agree about there is no such thing as a gateway substances. Gateway is the environment, and we're using substances to help us cope with a world not meant for us. Yeah, massively agree with that. I can, yeah. I feel like I don't know if anyone else has experienced this. And again, I'm going to talk about death for like the next couple of minutes, probably. I've had 2 people die in my life because of drug complications. And one of them was the biggest reason that I never went anywhere near opioids. And I cut myself off from the group of people who I was doing all these ridiculous things with. Complete and utter cut off. Like when you were saying about moving to that part of Philly where you couldn't talk to anyone and couldn't see anyone, Bobbi, I was like, yeah, I just squirreled away in my mum's suburban house and was like, yeah, like, no, I'm not talking to anyone. This is it now. And 5 years ago now, a friend of mine who I was friends with for about 12, 13 years, and I had always known him as a heroin user, and he died with complications with that. And when I looked around at who else was at the funeral, I was like, yeah, some of us are still very much in this lifestyle, and there's probably only me who isn't. Not judgment, just an observation. And I thought, and I looked around at all the people there, including myself, and I thought it could have been any one of us. That could be any one of us. And then next year I could be looking down in a hole and it's one of you guys. And that for me was just like a lot of years late, but that was like my reaffirmation. I don't know if that's quite the right word I'm looking for, like that I made the right choice for me to get out of the situation when I did. But I don't know if anyone's had, I don't know if this is too difficult to talk to for people. Obviously, if you don't want to join in with this, that's absolutely fine. But
No, I mean, I had a good experience and I've had a bad experience. So a friend of mine was from when I met them, they were an alcoholic and bad and probably addicted to drugs as well. And they sobered and they've been sober for over 30 years. Right. And like, woohoo, like so happy for them. And then I have another friend who was well into ketamine and jumped in front of a train. You know, sorry, trigger warning, and lived, but then died during COVID, during the pandemic. But you know, when they lived, they were paraplegic. And this is the stuff that people don't talk about. You know, when you are really heavily into drugs, and she was heavily into them at the time. She didn't know what she was doing. You know, she was a shell of who I knew before. You know what I mean? And afterwards, brain injury. You can't jump in front of a train and not have some sort of brain injury, you know, as well. Glad to have them around. Don't get me wrong. And I was glad for the time I had with them before they passed. But it's sad, you know, and I'm lucky to say I don't know anybody that's died completely of a drug overdose. Like, I don't. And I'm quite glad for that in a weird way. You know what I mean? Not to say that I know other people know people who have. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because Dawn, her name was Dawn. Dawn and I were very, very close at one point. She was like a sister to me.
It's hard. It's really hard. If I may read Sai's comment, I only stopped drinking because it nearly killed me. I stopped smoking because of COVID. Being recently diagnosed with a serious health condition, I wanted to be as healthy as possible in case I got COVID. Got it and was seriously ill, but if I was still smoking, it could have been worse.
Mm.
Yeah.
I gotta put a thing out there. I've got to be completely blatantly honest. Cannabis in the U.S. is a different situation, and for my mom, when she was dying of cancer, it was a godsend for her.
Yeah.
An absolute godsend, you know. But to use it to mask, to use it to sort of numb yourself, that's a whole different story as far as I'm concerned.
Mm.
Yeah, I agree with them. It's
think-
hard. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I just think that in my experience, like everyone I've always hung around with, not the people I hang around with now, but everyone I used to hang around with when I was younger, like smoking cigarettes or smoking weed, like it wasn't even considered, like weed wasn't considered a drug.
No,
Despite the fact that it's illegal, like
Yeah.
you can't go to the shop and buy it, like
Yeah.
it was never like considered a
Yeah.
drug, I don't think. And I still don't think of it like that now. I don't know. I don't smoke it, but if someone turned up to work smelling of it, obviously I'm sending them home. But like
Yeah.
I don't sit here and think of weed as a drug, and I really don't know why that is.
Well, because it's changing. Let's be really honest. Sorry to interrupt, but because it's changing in different parts of the world and in the States, it has changed massively. You know, I grew up in the 70s. I remember the don't do drugs. I remember the whole Reagan stuff. You know, it was hammered into us, and then suddenly somehow I don't know where it came about or who finally realized that medicinally it's a different situation and it's controlled and it's safe. I'm talking about specifically in the States and specifically in like what I saw and how I helped my mom out. I went into a dispensary. I know what they're like in that respect. So for me, same thing. I don't consider it a drug. The only time I consider it a drug, and I will be brutally honest, is if you're a young kid, especially an autistic kid, and you're smoking to disassociate or you're smoking to just blend out. Then it's a problem.
Yeah. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I have a slightly opposing view, which is that I absolutely do see cannabis as a drug. That doesn't mean that I think it should be illegal. That doesn't mean that I think it can't have medicinal uses. In case it's not clear, I'm pro decriminalization of all psychoactives. You know, I believe that, you know, there is emerging research now that a lot of these substances that are illegal do have some interesting potential, you know, as medicines.
Yes.
But ketamine, for one.
Yeah. What does irk me a bit, though, is when people act like cannabis is harmless.
Right.
Because I've seen cannabis do some harm. I've seen it do some real harm.
Same.
I've seen people go completely off the deep end with it.
Yep.
You know, it, like any mind-altering drug, you know, it can be taken too far, or you know, I'm not going to say misused, because like I said earlier, it's not misuse. That's just another way of putting the blame on the person using. But it can be used for the wrong reasons. You know, if you know, if you're using it all day, every day, because you physically cannot cope with your life as a sober person, there is a deeper underlying issue there that needs addressing.
You alter your state of mind to the point of making being high your new sober. So when you don't have access to that substance, then suddenly the world is not real. I've been in both situations where I coped to the point of always being high, and coming back from that, like literally sparked psychosis. Like I had to go through hell basically to get myself in a healthier place with marijuana, like, or with cannabis. And now, I still use it for pain management because I live with EDS. It's not, and fibromyalgia. Like it's not something that I can't live without at this point in time, even with my other medications that do help. But I have to tell myself my health is worth something to the point of not reaching psychosis again. Like, I have to pay it so closely attention. I don't know if anyone experiences this here, but specifically with cannabis, like, I will go through phases of body chemistry where I cannot smoke more than one hit of something, or I will literally lose my mind. And it's never very clear when that will happen. So if I don't pace myself to begin with, I can end up in really poor situations, and it's super embarrassing, especially when I'm with other people, because like that's not who I am. But it's like this whole thing. So now that I value my health, now that I value this body, which took a lot of healing trauma, going through therapy and confiding in friends, just meditating, mindfulness, like coming back, like bridging the gap between mind and body. I have to use cannabis as a tool, not as a let's forget the world drug, or let's just hang out drug, or, you know, like it's been a weird relationship development, honestly.
I'm going to say that's one of the reasons why I want it to be regulated. I'm waiting for the UK to just open it up medicinally, get the regulations on, because the thing is, with the difference, this is what blew my mind. The dispensary I went to with my mom, and my mom was at end stage metastatic breast cancer. I can never say that. It had gone into her bones.
Oh, wow.
And the guys there, the people there were just like, oh, okay, so we need this one because she needs to eat. Let's, you know, this one, this and this is going to be good for her eating and for pain and, you know, helping her to sleep and all that. Like, the most amazing people. She can't smoke. Okay, well, let's look at it in a vape, or let's look at it, you know, in edibles and things like that.
Yeah.
It has to be regulated, because you're 100% right, David. And I take it back. I do consider it a medication, a drug. Absolutely. And that's why I'm calling for it to be, you know, regulated, because let's be really honest, there is a link between mental health and cannabis. And I know too many young kids.
We
Too
have
many young kids.
receptors literally in our brain for it.
I know,
Literally,
but
but
it
that doesn't mean, right? That doesn't mean that we should be allowing children to have access to it.
Right. You know, unless you're 21 years old, like with alcohol, as far as I'm concerned, you should not be having access to it, because the link is in research is with a young mind.
Yeah.
And if there is some sort of mental health connection that possibly could be there, or it's genetic, sometimes cannabis actually brings it out. You know, a friend of mine makes them paranoid. Absolutely. And one hit will do that to them. You know, so you're not playing, you're not, like David said, it is a drug, and it's not something to play with, you know, to be played with in any way, shape, or form. Sorry, I went off on a rant.
You're great. So we have a comment here, and I also have side comments. So does anyone want to read?
I'll do Tanya's. I think it's Tanya. Who's saying, I'm pro legalizing also, and I also know substances like cannabis can affect neurodevelopment. If used before you're 25 years old. Exactly. Exactly what we've just been talking about as well.
And here we have Sai saying cannabis and psilocybin both have great medicinal properties. The stigma around cannabis and voice hearing psychosis stopped me seeking help, or at least education, in my teens. I was a voice hearer and visual hallucinator as a child before any drug use, but I was concerned I would be blamed for it. Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've got some comments on what Sai just said, actually, because first of all, personally, I'm completely abstinent. I've been teetotal for going on 7 years now, but unlike the stereotype that people have of people like me who are completely abstinent, I'm not a dick about it. Cannabis has so many medicinal uses that need to be researched. Psilocybin there's great promise for the treatment of depression with psilocybin. There's uses they're looking at uses for LSD. They're showing that MDMA can have really good uses for post-traumatic stress disorder and, you know, processing traumatic events. You know, ketamine has been, you know, ketamine infusions have done wonderful things for people with treatment-resistant depression. You know, we need these drugs to be researched, and the only way they're going to be researched properly is if we stop the, quite frankly, very bigoted laws that keep them illegal. Because when you look at the reasons why they became illegal, it becomes very obvious it was to serve an agenda and not to protect people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually
Racist
agenda. Sorry, I'm going off.
No, really though. Like that is exactly right. It's more to control populations than to actually keep us safe. Period. And yeah, I was just gonna say it has racist roots, 100%. So I was just saying often white supremacy related. Yeah. Class and race, huge targets. And here we have Katie saying, which I'm super excited to get into because I have stories. But Katie says many of us have genetic polymorphisms or atypical differences in how we process some drugs and find out the hard way. And I have to say that this is even true, or even not even true, but like just as true as it is for recreational and psychedelics as it is for pharmaceuticals. I can't tell you how many goddamn times I've been put in the hospital because I was prescribed something that was supposed to be good for me. And my autistic ADHD brain hated it, and no one would listen to me. I'm super, super sensitive. They put me on like the normal dose or even above the average dose, thinking, oh, well, you have this big of a problem. We must, overcompensate. I don't know why I ever let doctors do that to me, but I've been out of hospitals because of it. And these are like safe substances, like controlled substances that a doctor is prescribing. It's just we don't have enough research yet for specific drugs with ADHD brains is where I would like to see a lot more focus coming out. And
boy, do I have a story to follow this up, which is we did warn people we were going to talk about institutionalization. So trigger warning, I'm going to talk about my time in the psych ward the second time. And I went into the psych ward experiencing psychosis. I only recently found out, well, finally got a diagnosis that I have a schizophrenia-like condition called non-organic psychotic disorder. And when I was in there, they took one look at me, and I'm a big guy. I mean, I'm bigger now than I was, but I'm 6.5 foot tall. At the time, I weighed 18 stone. And they took one look at me and they went, we're going to medicate you hard because if you kick off, we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So they put me on quetiapine, and which for my American friends would be called Seroquel. They whacked the dose up to 800 milligrams a day, which is the maximum dose that can be prescribed in the UK. I came out of the psych ward a month later, and within about a month of that, I was in the emergency department with a severe cardiac arrhythmia caused by the quetiapine.
Oh my God.
And they did not expect that to happen. And they were like, my psychiatrist, I remember, was like, you always seem to get these really rare side effects, David. I was like, could there be a reason for that?
Literally, what is that? Why can't they be individualized enough? Like, yes, have your statistics and your research and go based off of that. But if the person is literally telling you, hey, this is my experience, why is that not a red flag to say, oh, man, that's not normal. We need to take you off of this. Like, why do we have to fight for that kind of recognition? It doesn't make sense.
They think they know better. It's the only reason why. It's the only reason why that would be. It's because they think they know better.
It's infuriating. And here we have another example. Someone commented, it's why Oliver McGowan, autistic young man in the UK, died. They ignored his family when they said he couldn't have a certain drug and gave it to him anyway, and he died. What the action? Oh my God.
And this is the thing that people leave out of conversations about substance use is substance use doesn't just mean going out and getting high. If you are on psychiatric medications, you are using substances. Now, it doesn't mean you're using them to get high, but they are substances and you are using them. Now, you know, like they're prescribed, and I'm not going to med shame anyone. I am on a ton of medication for my mental health. And you know what? It to me, it saved my life. But you can't leave prescription medication out of discussions about substance use, because you know, and it's not just psychoactive drugs that can be an issue when it comes to autistic people. I know people who take things like naproxen, which is a anti-inflammatory, and it makes them all loopy, and they're all autistic as well. Isn't that a surprise?
Yep. Wait a minute, seriously, that's me. That's me. And it's the first person, you are the first person that's ever said that. I've never heard anybody else said that. And I'm like, I'm telling my doctor, I'm telling the GP, you don't understand. I almost passed out. Yep. I was so gone. I was so tired. They're like, I'm like, I'm not taking it. I'm just not taking it. And I didn't. You know, the prescription was coming and I wasn't taking it. And they're like, how are you getting on? I'm like, I'm getting on great because I'm not taking it.
Take care of you. Yes. Oh God. I did want to clarify. I forgot to mention. So ADHD, I used that term earlier. That's just autistic and ADHD combined. For clarification, if anyone's watching.
It's a portmanteau.
A what?
A portmanteau, I think it's called, isn't it? When you combine words
yes.
together.
When you,
yes.
Yep. And here we have Sai saying, I was taking 14 tramadol a day prescribed by a doctor, but if I use cannabis, it's frowned upon and illegal.
Yeah.
That's messed up. Personally, I think that's messed up.
And I really want to
messed up.
I really want to weigh in here because 14 tramadol a day. Tramadol, and I'm saying this as someone who's not just taken a lot of tramadol. I'm saying this as someone who works in the field of substance use and has worked in the field of substance use. Tramadol is way more dangerous than cannabis. Way more dangerous. It's a controlled drug in the UK now. It didn't used to be, but it was so many people were overdosing on it that it's now quite a strictly controlled drug. You have to sign things to get it these days.
Yeah. And my mom was taking it like candy in the last couple of months of her life. So I know for a fact that stuff was harsh. Like I knew it. I mean, I was originally, they originally wanted to put me on it for Ehlers-Danlos, literally because my spine is just an absolute mess. And I remember taking one and I couldn't function. And that's me when it comes to any kind of medication or substances. I have to be able to function. If I can't function, I'm not taking that pill.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I found that out once. I did ketamine once accidentally, as you do these things. A friend in Punk Fest was like, do you want to take this? Yeah. You're not really supposed to drink with it. Okay, I've had about 10 pints already, but I'm sure, let's just crack on. And then fell down like a flight of like 30 stairs and the ambulance got blown down. And I was like, I'm not doing ketamine again. This is bullshit.
Wow.
I'm falling down like this. This is not my usual state. Like, I don't mind being pissed and everything else, but pissed for people who don't know is like being really, really drunk.
Right.
I don't think it's an American thing, is it? So
it's not. No.
So yeah, like I don't mind being like absolutely blasted, but I need to be able to walk. Like it's quite a big thing for me. So I get that. Like, I don't like loopy downers. Like that's really that really
same thing sort of happened to me. A friend offered what I thought was a line of coke. No, it turned out to be heroin.
Oh God.
Seriously, that's when it gets. I mean, this is the dangerous part, and like I got nothing to lose. I'm old. I'm going to tell the truth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and that's the problem.
Yeah, I do want to come back to Sai's point that he's put in the comments, but before I do, I actually worked with a local university here in Brighton to introduce drug testing kits so that the students could test the drugs they were about to take, and that was inspired. Because the work I was doing, we had 2 drug-related deaths come in that were students who thought they were doing coke and accidentally took heroin overdoses instead.
Jesus.
But Sai was talking about the 14 tramadol a day, and he said he changed surgeries, and the new doctor cut him to 1 a day. Can we talk for a second about
just
how
from that to that?
Yeah.
Oh my
Can we
God.
talk about how this kind of approach that some doctors take creates addiction?
Also,
Like, because if your body is used to 14 tramadol a day and then they cut you off, your brain is going to go, I need my opioids.
Overdrive.
And the first place you're going to go is literally anyone who's offering them. Because I don't know if you've been through opiate withdrawal. It is a living fucking hell.
Yeah.
Like, excuse my language. But
it's the
orange.
truth.
Yeah. I would love to talk briefly about the interplay between pharmaceuticals and psychedelics as well, because I have just a brief history. In 2019, I was coming off Cymbalta wrong, because at the time we didn't know I had EDS. We just figured anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, the trifecta. Let's treat it with Cymbalta. And my body hated it. They put me on, like, by the end of the month, I was up to like 60 milligrams or some shit. Like that was the recommended dose for a small sensitive being. Why, I don't know, but that's where we were. And I was leaving for a camping trip. And that morning I freaked out because it felt like I was on a bad acid trip, literally. And my symptoms weren't just like brain zaps, but like I remember opening a pill bottle that morning and my finger like twisted in this weird cramped way that I've never seen my body move ever. I didn't know that was possible. So it freaked out, and I quit cold turkey, which you're not supposed to do, especially with Cymbalta, but it freaked me out. And I was leaving, like, people were depending on me. I couldn't wait for a doctor to get me, a lower dose so I could titrate down or whatever. Like, that just wasn't possible. So I go on this week-long or almost week-long camping trip. It's like a once a year Midwest regional burn thing, like a small Burning Man. Everyone's very free spirited. It's very home feeling, and people take drugs, people drink, people experience, humanity in those ways. And so I dabbled with LSD, mushrooms, and ketamine for my first time, actually. And I'm so glad that I did that, because it actually suppressed my central nervous system enough so that the following week was the week that I went to the hospital instead of the week during the camping trip. And getting into the hospital, my mom, being who she is, just blurted out to the doctors that I had done XYZ drugs the week before, without my consent. Like, she just told them. And so in my chart now, I have it permanently in my record that I am a drug abuser, because I tried those drugs once. I mean, like the mushrooms and the LSD I'd had before, but ketamine was my first time. And it's forever influenced how I get medications right now. Like right now, I'm trying to get Adderall again for ADHD, and I've been put through the freaking ringer just to get Adderall.
Yeah.
Which I know works for me in small doses. I've been through it before with other doctors, but because I'm female bodied and told that, like literally there was a female doctor that didn't really put anything about the drug use in my chart, but what stayed in my chart was the male doctor's perspective, who listed drug abuse as my number one issue. Like, do you know how effed up that is? If I hadn't taken those drugs, I would have been in the hospital in a way worse off state. Like, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. Lorena asked David, that amazing for the drug testing kit. Which university offered that?
That was the University of Sussex in Brighton.
So anyway, I just that's my story for the interaction. And I'm sure I could come up with other things, but I'm just curious if anyone has experience with having your controlled substances through your doctor versus the interaction with recreational stuff.
I can tell you in reference to my sister, the reason she's still drinking and doing drugs is because she's been an addict since the 90s, late 90s, pretty much. And they won't let her have. she's ADHD, and they won't let her have the ADHD medication.
Yep.
Because of her drug use.
Yep.
And she at the time, the insurance wouldn't pay for the only couple of drugs that, for ADHD that are not amphetamine based, or you know what I mean? Like it's non-stimulating ones. She can't get them either.
They set you up for failure every freaking turn.
Mm.
Every single turn. I hate that. I hate that so much. We've got a comment by Sai, and we also got Tanya.
Do Tanya's first, because I've got a lot to weigh in on both, but more on size.
Okay. All right. So Tanya's saying, I just saw in a mommy group someone recommending CBD. Awesome. For someone's kid who is having meltdowns instead of, finding out why the heck they're having them. Drugs, legal and illegal, are used to just cover or suppress instead of heal. I do think, yes, we should be getting to the root of why, always. But I don't think there's harm a lot of the time. If we're like, CBD to me is not, see, I don't know how to say it. It's like a safe.
I can tell you. CBD you don't get high off of. That's the difference. You have two parts of cannabis,
right.
Of the cannabis plant. You have THC and you have CBD. THC is what actually gets people high.
Right.
CBD is supposed to be good for all kinds of different aches and pains and
body
like
stuff.
Yeah, and body stuff. I personally, in my opinion, I tried CBD because it's all over the place over here, right?
Yeah, it's legal,
in the UK, and they're using industrial hemp, right? It's not the right CBD. People.
Yeah,
it's not. It's from industrial hemp, so it's a completely different structure. It's a completely different plant. The CBD that people are talking about, and personally, I don't think any child, unless with a doctor is involved, should be involved in any CBD or THC or anything to do with cannabis, in my opinion.
Yeah,
go on.
This leads me into the point I was going to make is CBD. Once again, people go, "Oh, it's harmless," but actually, in the UK, it's completely unregulated, so you don't actually know what you're getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is little to no research of its use in children. And trigger warning, what I'm about to talk about is real bloody upsetting. I know there are communities on Reddit that talk about giving young children, autistic children, LSD and psilocybin to treat their autism. And I think it's part of a wider issue with attitudes towards neurodivergent people. They see it as a problem to be corrected, and they do not care how much harm they do us whilst they're doing that.
Yeah.
Wow. I completely agree. Always consult a doctor. Literally, always consult a doctor. And children specifically, like, maybe we shouldn't be going straight to drugs. Like that. That is an option. That's something I struggle with too, because like with ADHD, we have Adderall and Ritalin, which have been prescribed for decades now for children, instead of looking at environmental factors, diet, that kind of stuff. So it's a mixed bag, right? Like we have intervening medications that can help children, but do we actually know the harm of them? And now we have newer things coming up like the CBD. Like, is this something that's going to be studied more? Who's offering their children as guinea pigs kind of thing? Like, how do we even approach that, really?
Yeah.
But I think, what was shoot, David, you said something that I sparked my brain and now I've lost it. That's fine.
No, I was gonna say in reference to my child, when I didn't know better, at one point the pediatrician, my youngest was ADHD as well, right? As far as they were concerned, first it was ADHD, then they got the diagnosis for autism, but still, in for whatever reason, because I didn't know better, you do better, Bobby. They were in junior school. It was a lot of calls. It was a lot of a lot of that. The next thing I know, my child is being put on Vasium, what it's called over here, which is an ADHD medication, and it was horrific. They didn't eat all day when they were on this. Like they didn't like eating in front of people anyway because of exposure anxiety, which is like a big day, right? But they didn't eat at all on this medication, and I kept saying, like, this child seems wired. Right? Like my child shouldn't be wired So it took another week then to finally pull them off. They were on it only very briefly, but it was enough for me to go, well, wait a minute, like, why am I agreeing to this? And look what the reaction is like. Did they expect that? Or was it just, we go to the drugs first? I don't know,
I've got something to add to that, if I may. It's a cheeky plug, actually. Kind of, but kind of not, because it's Aucademy based anyways. But there's a book I'm reading at the moment to review for Aucademy, and they were talking, the person who's written this book, which I will talk about once I've actually finished the book, is very interesting so far. And they were talking about, they're based in Israel, and they were talking about the fact that both their children are neurodivergent, and I think their boy was given ADHD meds, like not concentrating in school, ADHD meds.
Yep.
And it took the mum, so the writer of this book, a lot of searching and a lot of, no, I don't think this is actually what's going on with him. Like, I think it might be this. I think it could be that. I think it could be this. It took about 2 or 3 years of this boy being on this medication because things seem to be ticking along, and then realized after all of her insistence about getting things checked out that they had Erlin syndrome. Erlin
Yeah,
syndrome.
I know exactly what you mean. The glasses.
Saying that correctly. So, like, they weren't sitting and concentrating on their schoolwork because literally everything in front of them was just completely morphing together. Like their ability to be able to understand, like, so it's like it's a visual processing order, very much like in inverted commas, just for people who don't know. So like depth perception, like, so he was always falling downstairs.
Yes.
There were problems with concentrating in class because obviously you can't read the board. You can't see you, like you have no idea what the hell's going on. So this young man was put on medication for all these years, and then the school was obviously lapping that up because it turned a child who wasn't concentrating into a docile child who also wasn't concentrating because they can't see what's going on.
Wow.
And it took all this kind of like dedicated advocacy to work out that, my child's not got ADHD or what I like to call functional hyperactivity. Like they can't see what's going on. Like, like 3 years of being medicated on this stuff whilst they're like 7, 8, 9. And I don't blame the parents on this because when you've got children, you do whatever you think is right for them. And you base that around people that you trust and resources that you read, and that changes throughout your life. So I'm never going to blame parents for stuff that looks, if you see what I mean, like it looks legit. So I don't, no judgment on her at all, but just like, Jesus, like all these people around her and all these loopholes that she had to go through. And if she hadn't have done that, her child could be like 12, 13 now and still on medication and still not being able to read and engage with stuff because no one's decided. And I think like that's a very, like in my experience with work and stuff where I work with disabled kids, like I find that with boys, it's a very quick to, messy, does this, talks a lot, very loud, ADHD, as opposed to like, I mean, a lot of boys are like that anyways.
Yes.
A bit hard to find it. And a lot of children are like that. A lot of children are like that.
Forget, they're kids. Kids are like that. Kids are energetic. Kids are messy. They're kids.
So, and then to just throw, drugs at young people as opposed to thinking, what about all the other things that's going on in their life and their environment and who they're with and school and everything else, because it's usually parent blaming above anything else. So they look at parents as long as they can have a go at us, especially if we have like vulvas, like the age old thing of being in charge of vulva. Obviously that makes us 10 times worse. Sorry, that's my rant for the evening.
No, that's so important, because this is what I think it's coming to is we all know we exist in a pathological paradigm, right? Like this is the essence of our society, is like we diagnose, we ostracize because of conditions and symptoms and all that stuff. And so if we are continuously operating out of that system, both the parents and the doctors have the opportunity to just be wrong. To just be wrong. Because we think it's one thing, and because of pathology, if things check off this box like you're talking about, Katie, must be this, can't be anything else, can't waste my time researching more into it because I've got thousands of other patients to take care of. And like, our system is not built for the shift that we need yet. And so it's very precarious when we are like, and I'm not a parent, but obviously I grew up with a parent, so with my own conditions, right? So I suffered for 20 plus years, not really knowing what was wrong with me, and just having labels thrown at me and dismissive behavior, patronizing, condescension, and not getting my needs met, not having the treatment that I needed to have the best quality of life until literally last year. I'm 28 now. Oh, I hope that's not me. I'm so sorry. What? I'm so sorry. Don't call me right now. So that being said, though, it is both imperative for parents and doctors to continuously stay in communication, to continuously recognize that we are all human practicing, like literally doctors practice medicine. Yes, many of them have this great big head on their shoulders thinking, oh, well, I went to medical school and I completed all these courses and I've been working so many years in the field, so therefore I don't need to keep learning. But when you find the good ones, that is the goal, to continuously be practicing, to continuously be listening and honoring and respecting, to find, oh, maybe we shouldn't be concerned so much with labels just yet with our children, and just gauge their behavior and try strategies to mediate the behavior in whichever way makes sense, without having to immediately go to medication or immediately going to abusive therapies. Like, it is a tough world out there, is all I'm getting at. And I so appreciate this conversation because it's helping us take stock of what is, just what is, yeah, David, and I'm sorry, I keep forgetting to read Sai's comments, so we'll bounce back.
Yeah, you mentioned the pathology paradigm, and actually I think it's a very relevant conversation for this evening, because when you look at the pathology paradigm, basically anything that stops you from being a compliant, tax-paying, profit-producing machine is a pathology. And it's for that same reason that there is a moralistic judgment on substance use, because people who are using psychoactive drugs are much less likely to be compliant. They're much less likely to be in a job paying taxes, because a lot of us fall into addiction and it tears our lives apart. And the problem is it's like a vicious cycle, because the pathology paradigm and the capitalism and all of that exists, and it traumatizes us, so we turn to the drugs. So we turn to the drugs, and the drugs ruin our life even more. So now this society hates us even more, which creates more trauma. So we more, and you get caught in this shame cycle of, oh, well, why are you using drugs? It's terrible. Look at what you're doing to your family. Look at what you're doing to the people who love you. Cool. Well, now I hate myself, so I'm going to go get high to deal with that. But why are you using drugs? And it just carries on. And it's an absolute nightmare trying to escape from these cycles that are largely because of the fact that we live in a pathology paradigm.
I've just written down here, I've written so many notes. Sorry, I realised that I'm probably talking over Simon. I've written so many notes today, but I've just written the fact, what you said, David. It's like stepping into another minority status, like another minority stress level, if you will. Oh, I feel an article coming on, David.
It's an exploited class of people. It's a different form of exploitation. Like, that's, I don't know, at least that's how I would relate to what you just said. So with Sai here, I've skipped a few. I'm going to read through them, and if anything jumps out. Because of the tramadol, I was put onto a program. I had to attend a 1-to-1 once a week and asked to attend a voluntary group meeting. Undiagnosed autistic at the time. I just couldn't do the group meeting. So after a month, they kicked me from the program. Thanks, Recovery Services. Wow. CBD did help my anxiety. It's calming and pain relief rather than high. CBD has been used for decades, but is unregulated in the UK. And the recent boom means there are a lot of fakes, which is, again, something you addressed. The more people think something, the more it is ingrained into their thinking. Memory and belief works by layering the same concept over and over until it's a fixed part of your thinking. Groups, society are a breeding ground for layering harmful concepts and ideas. You tackle that by doing the same, but positively spreading accurate information, the idea of compassion.
Nice, yeah.
Oh, sigh. Yep.
Can we just go back to the recovery services quickly?
Go ahead.
Because I have a rant here.
Yes,
I have a rant locked and loaded. Recovery services are completely, at least in the UK, are completely ill-equipped to help neurodivergent people. Okay, you go to a recovery service and they're just like, "Have you tried the 12-step program?"
Yeah.
Like,
have you kept all these appointments at this exact time? Oh my God. Sorry.
Like, I hated every minute of the 12-step program, and after about a year of it, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it my own way. And that was basically their big. That was them. You know, that was their trump card. Was we're going to beat this with the 12-step program, and I was like, why? Like, I'm autistic, right? Like, I don't like these people who want to hug me, shake my hands, judge me, and normalize my behavior to some weird set of rules. And I get the 12 steps works for some people. And you know what? If it works for you, that's fantastic. But the research I've seen says actually for 98% of people, it doesn't work. So maybe recovery services need to step away from group models and look more at individualized support that actually takes a person's needs into account. Because going back to the beginning of this conversation, where you have unmet support needs, you have an increased risk of addiction.
Right.
And I think, like, if I had left the situation that I left and had then gone to a support group, I would then have been entering a space that is full of people where I know that I can get substances from you.
Exactly.
So I've literally just left a really dangerous place for me to go into a room that is full of other people who can get me whatever I like and will probably do it with me, and then will form friendship groups. And like, I don't have any personal experience of it myself, but I see that a lot in kind of like pupil referral units. And you know, there was a young person. I did some training on talking about criminal exploitation, actually, like county lines, child exploitation and stuff. So for those who don't know, county lines is like basically young people, usually teenagers or like really young kids, used to basically mule and sell drugs in kind of suburban areas outside of kind of like London, Birmingham, Liverpool, Manchester, and they have like secured mobile phone lines, and that's why it's called county lines. Very, very briefly, there's a lot more to it than that. And the young man I met, God, his story was beyond unbelievable. And then at the end he said, yeah, and I'm 21. And I was just like, Jesus Christ, like the life story he has. But basically, like, he'd started off with the tuck shop at school, at his school. So he was in a rough area of East London, and the tuck shop at his school was really expensive. So him, with an entrepreneurial mind, thought, I'm going to go to the shop down the end of my road and I'm going to sell bits from my locker and da-da-da-da. Lovely. Okay. Then that became a problem. Also, I need to tell you that this boy is black as well. So that obviously makes different implications for the way he was treated at school. So then that escalated, and now he's in a pupil referral unit where the people he's hanging around with aren't people who are selling, you know, dib-dabs from their rucksack at school. They're in some serious business, and even if they're not, they know people who are, or the people who targeted him. He's not an autistic person, but I just thought it was an interesting thing to bring up. You know, was very much aware of the vulnerability of the people who are in this pupil referral unit, but also like the kind of entrepreneurial spirit of him was almost taken advantage of, because oh, you know you're making money with this. Well, my goodness, let me introduce you to selling heroin to people in the suburbs, and then you're going to make some serious money. So they're actually taking him from what was relatively a safe-ish space and putting him in a space where you're just swimming with sharks there, mate. And I think this is the same thing with the kind of 12-step group support. So I don't know what anyone else thinks about that.
Well, interesting. Sorry, I don't mean to butt in, but interestingly, in the 12-step meetings, people assumed I was the one that they could get drugs from because I spent all of my time hiding in the toilet. And it wasn't because I was in there using, it was because I was anxious as hell and I did not want to be around these people. So I spent like 90% of the meetings in a bathroom stall, sobbing and sniffing because I was snotting from, and so they thought I was in there doing God knows what. And people assumed I was the one who was bringing substances in. I was like, no, I just hate being here.
So I have a question for the group then. What if so therapy is great for everyone, I think. Although I do want to say, like, if everyone needs therapy, like truly everyone needs therapy, maybe the systems that we live in are the problem. But, therapy in general, great. So we have therapy, but then we also have these recovery programs. And I'm wondering if we could shift our focus from the recovery itself, like the 12 steps, the making amends, and that's all great and everything. But what if we made recovery focused on like shared interests?
Ooh.
Like actually focus on the humanity of who we are instead of where we've been and what we're going through, like actually get us more engaged in things that make us who we are, that we love, that we want to get back to. And
that's such a good idea for a Facebook group now.
Yeah.
I know, like Knitters Anonymous. Yes. Come on.
Like connect over, like find community. Because Katie, you were talking about making friendships through a shared experience, right? Even though that might have been unhealthy for you at the time, like you were still finding ways to cope with whatever was going on and forming community that way. So what if we applied that lens to actual recovery programs that could serve all types of neurotypes instead of pigeonholing people and boxing them into this one type of recovery that actually doesn't do a whole lot of good for everyone?
I would say the same thing. Sorry.
Sorry, Bobbi. I don't like, it's not the same thing at all. But like, I always think about this as a new parent and a new mum. Like, it's this will link up in a minute. Before you think, what are they talking about? Like, they put people together because we're new mums, because we're new parents. I have nothing in common. Like, some of these groups are really nice, some of them aren't.
But
I have nothing in common with any of the people in this room apart from the fact that we have spawned smaller versions of ourselves.
Yeah,
that's weird, right?
That is weird, and that's honestly, I hate to butt in, but like that's sometimes why I feel weird about certain queer experiences or queer like pride meetups and stuff, because as much as I love celebrating queerness and who we are as queer people, I don't relate to everyone just because I'm queer. Like, yes, it's a part of my identity, but like, do you love music? What kind of music? Are you an artist? Do you want to go for a walk in nature and experiencing like what makes you that you like, not that you are? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
So when we connect for recovery purposes, it just like something is making sense to me that it might be more impactful if we focused on our likes and dislikes instead of who we are based on our actions or our tendencies. Like I don't know. Wheels are spinning.
This is the important caveat on my dislike of the 12-step program is that I'm not saying I learned nothing from it.
Well, no, of course not.
I took lessons from the 12 steps into my own journey in recovery. And you know what? It helped. I don't like the fact that the whole thing is based on abstinence, but for me it worked. So learning about abstinence was great for me, and I'm still here, so thank you for that. You know, having community was great. The fact that the community disappeared when I left the 12-step program was deeply upsetting.
Yes.
You know, so I think you're right. Having community-based recovery,
conjunction,
yeah,
like having this and.
Because at the end of the day, if you want to help people not be in active addiction, it's not as simple as just going, okay, let's stop you from taking the drugs. You've got to say, like, do you have appropriate housing? Do you have appropriate access to healthcare? Do you have appropriate support for your mental health?
Yes.
Do you need help getting a job? Do you need help, paying your bills? You have to look at the society we live in, which tries to give the smallest amount away it can, no matter how desperate you are, because our society does not care if you're at the bottom of the ladder. It doesn't want to help you climb up. So the community of addicts in recovery need to do what is reasonable for us to do to support people with climbing back up that ladder.
Yep. Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Emma here says, I think peer support groups can be vital for autistic people, but with the right rules and boundaries in place. I think, honestly, that applies for any group of people, autistic or not. Like, boundaries are important, and, rules are also important. But I agree. Like, what if we had the conjunction of, the traditional 12 steps or something along those lines in conjunction with the peer support, connecting over who we are through our likes and dislikes instead of, like I was saying, like, I think, I don't know, that could be something to look forward to in the future if enough people are willing to kickstart it.
I wonder, David, you probably might know this more than the rest of us here, perhaps. Is there much community research that goes on with this kind of like, like addiction kind of support, help with getting back into the community and kind of stuff like that? Do you know?
I'm not aware of any specific research into it. I am aware that there has been research into the 12-step program, which is hugely complicated because the 12-step program do not allow themselves to be studied. So even the statistics...
Red flag!
Yeah. The statistics surrounding it, like I said, what has been researched indicates that 12-step programs work for about 2% of the people that go through them. But it's difficult to get accurate figures on that as a community-based thing. But really, most of the research goes into what drug can we give you to stop taking drugs.
Right. Jesus Christ.
So, and this sounds a bit tinfoil hat, okay, but I think that research largely happens because drugs, make money, whereas community-based endeavors cost money.
Oh, yeah, big farmers like
ding, ding,
their hands together, like,
Yup. Oh my God. Lorena says, I feel like the community aspect is a big part of it on so many levels, especially for NDs, neurodivergent people, because of how we communicate. To have connection with others and not feel judged is key to being healed and healthy. Get rid of the shame, y'all. Yup. Brene Brown, if anybody is familiar with her work, she's phenomenal. Like revolutionary stuff. I mean, I'm sure there are other people in other places, but she has gained a lot of traction, whichever word. And shame is like the root of her research and practice, I guess you could say, where that is key. You have to not feel the judgment of others and of yourself. You have to feel safe enough to forgive yourself and let things go, and also be safe enough to not receive judgment from other people, to heal, to move on. And how do we do that? You have to have community. You can't do, I mean, you can work on yourself by yourself, of course. And that is a huge part of the healing journey, is sitting with your stuff and telling yourself it's okay. But like, you can only go so far when you don't have support. We are social beings. We're biologically wired that way. So I think it's a little unfair to assume that we can just do all the healing on our own,
Yeah. If I might, we've talked a lot about community. Identity is a big part of this as well, though, because for me, like, I grew up undiagnosed autistic with everyone telling me that everything about me was wrong, that, you know, I didn't fit in, they didn't want me around, I was the weirdo, I was the creep, no one accepted me for who I was. Who I was not fundamentally good enough for people, which caused an identity crisis in a sense, because I hated who I was, who I identified as. So instead of learning who I really was and finding the people who would accept me for that, I went to drugs and I found an identity I could exchange for the one that everybody hated. And I had this false idea that everyone loved this identity, because when you're with other drug users, like, they do socialize with you. You do sit up and talk about some really deep and emotional stuff, because you can't stop talking when you're on a lot of drugs. But it was a false identity. And actually, for me, I'd already been sober for a little while when I found them, but it was finding the autistic community and having an identity that felt right to me, and people that accepted that identity, that stopped me from going back.
For me, it was like I that resonated about, you know, not fitting and trying to find an identity. I realized it's got to be the demand avoidance in me to a degree, but I thought, you know what, you don't like me, I'm weird, fine, I'll show you weird. I'll show you weird.
I'm digging in, bitch.
That
Seriously, you know, until this day, it's like, yeah, okay, you can't hurt me with that word.
right?
There's no word, you know. I was called a nerd a lot because I was into books and I was considered quite smart, you know. Doesn't hurt me. Go ahead, feel free to call me that. I like the fact that I like books. Yeah, I'm weird. I will hold that high. I will paint that across my freaking chest. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I have to say, that's why I was really happy to see the weird pride movement start on Facebook, because it was like a real coming home sort of moment when everyone around me was going like, do you know what? Yeah, we're all weird, and we don't really care what you've got to say about it. So,
I think like what you were talking about, David, about like having like really in-depth conversations as well. And I think this is quite, like, for me personally, why I've always found people, not now because I'm in my 30s, but like when I was younger, like being around people who were the same age as me was really difficult, because I didn't want to talk about, oh, he said this and she done that. And no, I want to talk about like, okay, I've just read this book for like the 10th time. I need to tell you in great detail about what I feel about, you know, Emily Bronte or whatever. And obviously people don't want to talk about that. But when people are off their tits, this is brilliant. This is exactly the kind of conversation we're digging into. And I think part of that is not why I got into the scene with the people that I got into, but like, before I was in with bikers, I was in with punks and skinheads, because there was a lot of kind of political discourse. I was absolutely not getting that stimulation from people I was in school with, who I was in college with. And it just happened that political activism and veganism, oddly enough, goes hand in hand with ketamine and various other things, apparently. Like, you know, don't buy anything from Nestle, but if you want to smoke crack, then, like, you know, just carry on. You know, I don't eat animals, but, you know, I just going to do like £300 worth of cocaine at the weekend, but it's totally fine. I didn't hurt any animals. So, you know, but it's that weird, that was my experience of things. So, like, I wanted that political discourse, for as much as it's a massive contradiction to also, like, paying into massive drug cartels and stuff like that. Like, that wasn't what drew me to that, because I like punk music and various other things is what drew me into that kind of group of people. But it's definitely what kept me there.
Yeah.
You know, and kind of even like spiritual discourse as well was very much a thing that kept me in there. Not in a cult fashion, but just in a fact that these were the first people who weren't either talking about very set religions, but talking about like energies and how we treat other people is what comes back to us, and you know, like that really resonates with me. There's like a kind of hippie, there's a very hippie feel to punk, which a lot of punks was not like, but like that, like hippies and punks just wear different clothes, like as far as I'm concerned. So I think that's, I think that was a big part of it for me, just being, counter, like Katie says, counter culture. I can't say it, but
totally. Well, I mean, I think for me, it definitely was my demand avoidance, because I was quiet, so I was, you know, considered shy and all of that. So I rebelled very quietly, you know. Like I you know, there wasn't any sort of big sort of things that I rebelled against. It was, you know, slowly getting more black clothes. Oh, look, now she's wearing boots. Oh, wait a minute, why does she have 15 million different things around her wrists? You know what I mean? It was like, it was just, I call it kind of finding myself, because I definitely found my tribe. You know, the punk and the postmodern and all of that sort of, those people, the goth people, and they definitely were exactly weird like me, you know, and I love that culture. And I to this day, I'm sure that there were so many neurodivergent people in the crowd that I ran with at the time, and none of us knew it. None of us had any idea.
Most definitely.
We've also had some comments for Sai, I think, in the chat.
Go for it.
Yes. Most of them, okay, so therapy doesn't have to involve a therapist. It can be engaging in things that make you happy and being with and around friends. Absolutely.
Yeah. Therapy
can be having secret Zooms with green curtains. Everybody is weird. You just have to find your group of weird. I don't know, Chloe, why'd you put Chloe there?
That's what I'm saying. That's what she says.
Right. Okay.
That's a quote by Chloe.
I see. Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah, so exactly. I love that. Absolutely. Like, everybody is weird. You just got to find your brand of weird, you know? And I would like to comment on that, actually, because growing up, I mean, I still consider myself a chameleon, a social chameleon, where I have an identity, yes, but I have gravitated all my life to the groups that are counterculture. The nerds, the like hyper nerds, like teacher's pet people, the the sports that weren't always like considered the popular sports, music and choir, theater, goth. Like I've jumped, and now all of these things are part of me. But like going out to in Michigan and Ann Arbor, there's this club called Necto. It was the Nectarine Ballroom. Now it's called Necto. And every Monday nights is industrial night. And I love putting on that. I don't want to call it a mask, because it's not a mask for me per se, but it is like a
side of you.
It is a side of me that I get to embrace, and that I don't like every day. I'm not committed to it. I'm normally a very like bright rainbow bubbly person. But I love getting all sexy with reds and blacks and dark purples, and like getting dressed to the nines and being all edgy, and like being with my weird people who just go out and like jam their heads like this on the dance floor, you know? Like that brings my heart so much joy. And it's nice to know that like those people are always going to be welcoming almost to absolutely. Anyone who wants to join the group. That's the difference, I think. That's what counterculture for me, that's what punk is you are always accepting and being inclusive of anyone who wants to join your crew. I mean, aside from specific personal flaws, like if you hurt somebody, obviously that's not okay. But, you know, identity wise, like I love that as we're advocating for autism, we're also advocating for pure acceptance of any kind, really. Like we have to accept weird, because we don't know what's underneath that weird. We don't know who that person is and what groups they belong to. And, you know, so like if we just accept people as they are, it's not just autism, it's literally just accepting human diversity. And I love it.
Absolutely. Can I interrupt real quick? Because I really wanted to bring this up, because Chloe brought it up in the chat or on the post at one point. and I ended up watching it. So has anybody watched Elementary? You know the show Elementary? Okay.
No.
I didn't know it
Sherlock,
either.
yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know it either. So Sherlock in Elementary goes to Narcotics Anonymous and saying he believes he was born in the wrong time. It's too noisy, etc. And he might have not become an addict if he were born in a time suited to his neurology. So I watched that episode after she pointed that out, and I was like, oh, wow. Like that's a consideration. So it's not like, for me, it's not being born in a different time, but if my neurology was known when I was a child,
Yeah.
would I have gone down the route I went? Like, don't get me wrong, I have no regrets in anything because it brought me where I am now.
Right.
But it is a consideration, right? Like, it is something to think about.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We're all late recognized here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so that says something, I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
Probably says something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have so much more to add, but I'm really aware that I think we've all probably got lots more to add to this. Can I know we're on a live, but can I suggest that we do another one of these perhaps?
Yes.
Because there is some serious stuff that we have not dug
I'm
deep
down.
into enough.
Yes. For example, I
down for
really
that.
need to dig into the fact that I do not refer to myself as clean and sober because I was not dirty when I was using.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ooh, yeah, I like that.
Thank you, David.
So
Yes.
if you think there was like a kind of takeaway message from today, because some of the stuff we've spoken about has been pretty heavy, what do you think that might be? I'll put David on the spot first. Why not?
I mean, there's probably a few takeaway messages, but one
go
that
for it.
I think is really important to take away is that the language we use is important. We can't be using language that supports those moralistic judgments of drug use, alcohol use, substance use in general. You know, we've also got to be aware of the fact that not all substance use is an evil. You know, sometimes it does good things for people. That doesn't mean I'm advocating for everyone to go out and start, you know, doing lines of coke or anything. But you know, sometimes drug use serves a purpose, and it serves a purpose in addiction because it helps you cope with whatever it is you're trying to cope with. And yeah, it might mess you up, but it certainly does what it says on the tin for a while.
Okay, Bobbi, do you have anything you want to add to?
I would add to that the idea that, you know, do bear in mind when you're, you know, dealing with somebody who is using any substances, understand, especially if they're neurodivergent, why they may be doing so.
Yeah.
You know, like, don't judge them for it. Just try and possibly understand why that's happening. That would be my takeaway.
Yep.
Yeah.
On top of
Okay.
what David-
If anyone's wondering why they're watching this and I'm laughing and nodding and shaking my head every so often, because Sai is just littered in like
totally.
there's jokes in the entire world. And they keep popping up, and I'm like, he's making violent jokes, he's making all sorts of jokes. So that's why I keep smiling to myself. I'm not just being silent. Jaesic, do you have anything you want to add?
I think it's important to rely, speaking of Brene from earlier, I don't know if she started this, but I've latched onto the idea of the 3 C's: staying curious, compassionate, and courageous. If we address each other with curiosity and compassion and are courageous enough to engage in those ways, we don't have to be so judgmental and moralistically whatever, and actually address issues as they are instead of applying, you know, layers of BS of our own perception. So keep in mind that a lot of the time, like we've already talked about, obviously, environment plays a much larger role than we give it credit for, I think, when we talk about substance use. I think we can do ourselves a great deal, like a big favor, if we kind of set shame down for a second when we talk about this stuff, where we are just people who are doing the best we can given our circumstances, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I like the idea of addressing the need, the accommodation, the environment, and not judging the person for their actions outright.
Yes.
Yes. Si, I don't know if you've got anything to add. Oh,
Sorry.
oh my goodness. Si has descended into ridiculousness. Yeah, I can't even remember what he said. I just knew that it was funny. Something to do with it being legal.
Yeah, I got it. Fact of the day: hunting unicorns is legal in Michigan. That's what Sai has to add. But Chloe did want us to say, we still have 2 final Aucademy questions to come, and we need to make sure everyone knows that we're covering rejection sensitivity next week. So definitely come back for that. And Pam here, I don't know if you want to read it, but thank you all so very much for addressing this issue. It is so important to shine a light in this direction for so many of us. Thank you, Pam, for being here. Yeah.
Most welcome. So our usual question is to do with favorite stims or new stims that we're doing.
Yes.
Should we start with David? I keep starting with you just because you're next to me on my screen.
Okay. Yeah. Truthfully, my favorite stim is. I've got so many of them, but the one that I do the most, and probably one of my most annoying, depending on what what people are into, is I love cracking all my joints. I crack myself like a glow stick. And if I don't, I sort of turn to stone and can't move.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stim is self-care. That's it.
Hey,
Yeah.
that's like the golden opportunity. Like, I don't know. That's pretty legit. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win.
That's good. I couldn't tell if you were horrified or loving it, Bobbi, or a bit of both.
Oh, it's both. Half of me. So half of me knows about Ehlers-Danlos, and I know that David is hypermobile in places. And half of me sort of wants to say to him as a mother, stop cracking the joints. But then in the same respect, I myself go, oh, lovely. I cracked myself. So I can't really have a go at you. So yeah, that's what you saw. You saw the reaction of horror, but also, actually I can't do anything about that. I do it too.
And do you have a new favorite stim, Bobbi?
Oh, what I'm wearing tonight. So
I love those.
rings. My rings are just everything. They spin. They're claw-like. I can tap them.
Yeah.
Yes, they're everything for me right now.
Very Dolly Parton. Dolly Parton does that with her nails, doesn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
Scratching
She's
them.
one of us. She must be one of us. Yeah. And Jaesic, have you got anything new?
Yeah, actually, so on Thursday I had to go back to my dentist because I have this retainer, I guess you can call it, for my TMD like treatment. And I keep stimming with it, which is messing up my treatment because it's a plastic thing in my mouth. I can't stop. So she gave me little rubber bands, you know, the kinds that they put on braces. I'm supposed to stim with that instead, like have a little rubber band, and I'm supposed to work my way up to 2 where I just concentrate holding it like with the tip of my tongue into the back of my front teeth on the top. Like I'm supposed to hold the rubber band there, or just, you know, chew on the rubber band. That's fine too, because that's usually what happens.
Accidentally swallow the rubber band.
Yeah, I've already swallowed one because my ADHD brain forgot, and I was thirsty and I took a swig. I was like, well, that's in my system now. The first thing I Googled was, I just ate a rubber band, and it popped up. I love humanity some days because it popped up and they're like, will this rubber band hurt me? They're like, no, rubber bands won't hurt you. Like, it'll pass through your system untouched. Just don't eat a whole bag of rubber bands.
Refrain. I know you want to. Please.
I have to just read out Sai's comment because it's to do with one of my special interests. He says, speaking of rings, it's so hot in my room that 2 hobbits just walked in and threw a ring at me.
I love it.
Yeah.
Very good today.
Oh, this is completely thrown me
Oh,
off.
I can give you that now. My favorite potato is Ben.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. I can agree with that.
Ben,
Ben is
yeah,
better.
I think this is pretty unanimous. Ben is our favorite potato.
Ben is our
Just-
favorite
that's
potato.
Chloe is a potato as well, though, aren't they? Dr. Potato?
Yes, Chloe's up there.
Yeah.
There. But I think
Yeah.
Ben, when Ben is on, is only a potato. That's it. That's all. So Ben's become the hot potato.
Ben has been appearing as a potato on Zooms and
There you
Streamyard
go.
for so long
you.
now that I've actually forgotten what he looks like.
We've got two favorite potatoes, Ben and Chloe.
Right. On a serious, I love a jacket potato.
Oh, did we do
potato?
size for favourite stim? No, that way.
Oh yeah, was it something to do with beard, facial hair?
Oh yeah, the beard. I'm sorry, I forgot to. New stim again. Playing with my beard. I used to hate facial hair, but then it grew on me. Love it.
Right. Okay. Do we have? Is there going to be another secret last question, or is this actually it? Before we start saying goodbye.
I do have a statement to make, though. Don't worry, it's only 54 pages. No. I just want to say, like, how happy I am to be on a live stream about autistic people and drug and alcohol use with more than just me. Because the first time I did this live stream, it was just me and Chloe. I think it was just me and Chloe. No, it was me and Harry, back when Harry was part of Aucademy. And it was literally just me talking about it. And then the next time I did a substance use one, there was like 2 or 3 of us. And now this time there's 5 of us.
Yay.
And people need to keep talking about this subject because it's a seriously underrepresented subject in our community.
Absolutely.
And it's nice to not be the only one talking about it. And it makes me really happy.
And I've got to say, like, outside of, I nearly said this earlier when we were talking about community building, like outside of my husband, who I've told everything to, like you and whoever's been watching this, but the 4 or 5 people who I know are definitely watching this, you know, I've told you much more information than I've ever told anyone.
Same.
Like about anything to do with drugs and like losing people and stuff like that. So it's been really interesting, and I hope helpful for people who've been watching it or who are going to catch up with it when on YouTube or whatever. So yeah, and actually what Inga's saying is probably the real wraparound bit here, which I love. Just binning the shame, absolutely. And I think conversations around this, hopefully part of what we've done today is that, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And now we're just going to awkwardly wave until Chloe plays the music. Dun, dun, dun,
Come back next week.
Dun, 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 dun.